are created, we can start to get into our actual copy operations. So I'll start letting this run just so it can start the loading while I explain this copy statement. And you can see here that it's actually very simple, which is part of why we love to use it, is because it's both simple, but also very performant. So all you need to do is identify the table you're copying into, where you're copying from, in this case, our New York taxi blob, and then the file type, CSV. We're using a comma terminator, an empty field quote, and then we're actually, another great thing here is we're using a label as part of this copy operation, and that will allow us to actually track this data as well. While this loads, if you go back to the Knowledge Center, you can also find in our gallery for our SQL scripts, you can find other scripts that are actually about monitoring the execution of your copy statement. And so we won't open this up all the way, but you can see here that you can actually track labels and other options of that copy statement to actually track those loads as it happens. And just by running this as part of a stored procedure, you can actually get a really good view over what's going on in that job. We won't run that now because we're loading a relatively small amount of data. We'll just flip back over to our data hub and look at the execution of this as it runs. And so you can see that we're creating these tables, and then we'll be loading each of these files, each of these tables from these files into blob storage in turn. So while this runs, I want to talk about a few other things and a few of the concepts we'll be talking about in the future, as well as start to set up some of our SQL scripts. But just to review, what we've done so far is after creating our SQL pool, we created an external table to query the data while it lives in blob storage. And now we flipped over to using the copy command to actually create the tables in our dedicated SQL pools managed storage, and are now using the copy command to load those tables with files from our blob storage. So like I said, this is going to be an area where it helps to have the DB owner permissions, just because once again, we're creating tables, we're connecting to external data sets. As long as you have those, you should be able to be following along fully. So now what we'll be talking about after this data loads, we'll start to talk about some of the performance tools available to you within the dedicated SQL pool, as well as talking about some of the security controls that you can have as well to help manage who has access to the data directly within your SQL pool. So while we wait for this to finish loading, let's start to set up some of those SQL scripts. So we're going to go back to the Knowledge Center. We're going to go over to our browse gallery again, back to our SQL scripts. And you can also see here while we wait that we have a variety of other open data sets available to you. We're really working over this New York City taxi data a lot. If you have ever seen a Synapse session, it's a great data set to work over, one we like to use a lot. But there are a lot of other data sets that you could bring into your workspace with just a few clicks. You can get a preview of the data set, and then just by clicking add a data set, it'll automatically create that link service and allow you to access it right from your Synapse Studio. But for here, we'll keep going to the SQL scripts. And once again, just looking at what we have here, we're going to talk about performance now. And I really think the first and easiest thing to talk about with performance in Azure Synapse is the result set cache, because that is really core to a lot of our use cases around dashboarding and reporting with Synapse. Like I said at the end, I'll show you how to connect to a Power BI workspace and create a report and upload it so that it can be accessed from Azure Synapse. But it's important to know that dashboarding and reporting workloads can be hard. You might have hundreds of users that are refreshing reports, and each report might be made up of a dozen different graphs, and each graph may have multiple subqueries within it. So one refresh might send a couple dozen queries down to the Azure Synapse dedicated SQL pool that is really back-ending and supporting that Power BI report. The advantage, though, is because users will probably be running off of the same report and therefore sending down identical queries. Result set caching can really help ease that burden and make sure that your reports are still running performantly by helping to basically, return